Cheese. For those who don't know, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl, is a 2025 stop-motion animated movie created by Aardman and released exclusively for Netflix. Now for the 12.2% of my audience who's from the UK, for those who don't know, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl is a 2024 stop-motion animated movie created by Aardman and released on the BBC on Christmas Day. The last time we've seen Wallace and Gromit as a feature-length film was all the way back in 2005 with The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, made as a joint venture between Aardman and DreamWorks. That movie has its own history with DreamWorks constantly giving the crew notes and forcing them to Americanize Wallace and Gromit, which deterred them from making any more films with the duo. I specified duo because they made films, no doubt. Anyone remember Early Man? The movie's release so far has been overwhelmingly positive, with a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Do you know how hard it is to get audiences and critics to be on the same page? This movie has to be good. So the plot is relatively pretty simple. Wallace invents a smart gnome that he later offers to the town in exchange for money. Unbeknownst to him, however, Feathers McGraw, the villain from The Wrong Trousers, hacks the smart gnome and codes new instructions for the sole purpose of freeing him from prison and then enacting his new plan to steal the Blue Diamond. This ends up getting Wallace framed for theft, so Gromit goes on his own to figure out what is going on, culminating in Gromit and Feathers dangling over a train. Can you guess what happens next? Correct! The way how I describe this movie makes it sound shorter than it is, and that's because most of the runtime is dedicated to the mystery and seeing Feathers' plan unveil itself in real time. Going from the gnomes initially stealing random supplies, to creating a boat to rescue Feathers, to making the way back to Wallace's house because the Blue Diamond was switched with a radish right before the police took the sack and hid it away. And all it took was a tiny amount of retconning. I think that's what I like the most about this movie, the journey rather than the destination. The movie is designed to be rewatched. Every little detail is foreshadowed brilliantly. Nothing happens randomly or is resolved because of coincidence. 99% of the time, you can pinpoint a moment in the past that would wrap around to a choice made in the present. The movie's just so purposeful in that regard, which I think echoes the art of stop motion a lot. With stop motion, every frame you make needs to count. This is probably the most time-consuming way to animate anything, and as such, you really need to think about what you're going to make and how it influences the story. The stop motion in this film is generally breathtaking. Aardman has perfected the art of stop motion, but even parts where they use CGI or special effects for stuff they can't use in stop motion, for example the water, they blend them together so nicely. You can just tell how giddy the crew was now that the technology had advanced to a point where they can actually use water in more ways than before. I think back to Flushed Away and how one of the reasons Aardman went CG was because of how difficult it would have been to use water with plasticine. So the fact they're able to do it now is just so amazing, and oh boy do they use it a lot. The animation also applies to how this film feels. Something I've only now realized with Wallace and Gromit is how dark the series can be while also having a fairly lighthearted tone. The Curse of the Were-Rabbit is a good example, but I also think back to The Wrong Trousers and how Feathers literally pulls a gun on Gromit, or A Matter of Loaf and Death, where the plot is literally about a serial killer luring bakers in with her flirting skills before killing them. And the fact she did it over 12 times! I say this because I think this movie has the most creepy vibes so far. The gnomes are generally super unsettling when they need to be. The lighting helps immensely in this regard. And overall, this movie could have been shipped to theaters and I wouldn't have batted an eye. In fact, I wish it was shipped to theaters. I'm fairly sure the UK actually has a few limited screenings of this movie in theaters, though I need to fact check that. Another pro is the humor. From the visual gags to the dialogue, this movie is both funny and charming in a way you can't describe. That British charm is just all over this film and it's wonderful to sit through. I won't lie, not everything made me laugh out loud, but the parts I did certainly were great. I think my favorite subtle gag was how the police confiscated the bloody engine from Wallace's car. I know it's a high chance that the gnomes did it, but the cops did steal everything else, and we never directly see the gnomes snatch that, so who knows. Plus, regardless of who did it, it was still funny. The music is also amazing. I don't recall previous Wallace and Gromit joints using their theme song as much as this film did, but I don't know, having it used as a leitmotif helped this film a lot. I also enjoyed the story. Wallace and Gromit are probably the best IP I can think of to handle a technology goes evil plot. But also, they never fully paint technology as a bad thing necessarily. Norbot didn't become self-aware on his own. In fact, after he resets, he helps Wallace and Gromit out. Heck, they even invent a new piece of technology to save the day. I think this movie is more so trying to suggest a balance. Technology can be good and can assist you, but don't let it replace everything. There are some things technology just can't replace, and that's okay. Evident by Wallace patting Gromit. We go from Wallace trying to make a machine for the purpose of patting Gromit, to Wallace repurposing it for a better task so he can pet Gromit, which can be interpreted for AI in the modern day. AI can be helpful in some regards, but only as a jumping off point to create your own thing yourself, and not just typing in some text and generating some slop AI image and saying you made art. Let it assist the creative making process, not replace the creative making process. The emotion is also on point. You generally feel like Wallace regrets what he did. He's never a character who would do something bad maliciously. He's just an old man who can get way too caught up with his inventions to realize the harm they cause. He means well overall, and I'm glad that this film has him acknowledge it even in a small way. And honestly, the amount of cons I have are very small and borderline inconsequential. For example, I think the weakest element of the film is its B-plot, which features the chief from The Curse of the Were-Rabbit getting ready to retire, but being pulled to do one last case with the help of the new cop who recently joined. Nothing truly interesting is done with this, and to me, it only really exists to push Wallace and Gromit's plot forward. These two cops personally don't gravitate towards me, and while I do believe their inclusion are not highlights of the film, they're so digestible that I can live with them being there. I think it also leads into another con of mine, which is its runtime. It does feel like around the middle-ish to end, the plot isn't as tight as it could be. It's not unbearable, and I don't hate it, nor do I think anything is filler, but you can just tell these characters suit 30-minute specials more. But overall, Vengeance Most Fowl is a delightfully fun movie and a great return to form for the duo. I'm surprised that the last special they made was in 2009. I hope the success of this movie can spawn more short films or specials for Wallace and Gromit. They've been in commercial limbo for the past decade. They deserve it.